to this evening's Windsor Urban Development Control Panel. My name is Simon Meadowcroft. I'm Councillor for Clwyd South and Vice Chair of this panel, but I've been asked to chair tonight in the absence of the usual chair, Councillor Quick. Just a couple of bits of housekeeping before we start off. So we're not expecting the fire alarm to be tested this evening, so if it does go off, please leave the building quickly via either the main staircase or out through the Mayor's Parlour and gather outside Hampton's estate agents. Filming or recording of council meetings in the Royal Borough is permitted, but you do need to let us know if you intend to record the meeting, because there may be valid objections. And actually we're recording for the council purposes this meeting this evening. So before I move on to the agenda, I'd just like everybody on the panel to briefly introduce themselves, name and ward or role.
Well, good evening. My name is John Penfold. I'm Councillor for Clwyd North in Windsor.
Councillor Philip Bicknell, Park Ward, Windsor.
Wendy Binwell, Panel Administrator.
My name is Matthew Tucker and I'm a solicitor and the legal advisor to this panel.
Simon Meadowcroft, Councillor for Clwyd South.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Suki Coe and I'm the Development Control Manager.
Kate Doby, Planning Officer.
Good evening, I'm Tony Carr, I'm the Traffic and Road Safety Manager.
Good evening, I'm Simon Horrell, I'm Head of Planning for the Royal Borough.
I'm Councillor Sue Evans, Councillor of that ward in Windsor.
Good evening, Councillor Gary Muir, Thatcher.
Okay, let's move on to the agenda. So we start with apologies for absence.
There are 3 apologies for absence. We've got Councillor Quick, Councillor Lawless and Councillor Bathurst, and we have Councillor Sue Evans substituted for Councillor Bathurst.
And I now need to ask members of the panel for any declarations of interest.
Chairman, if I may, Legoland is in my ward, but I have no pecuniary or other interest.
So you will be speaking and voting?
Absolutely.
Can I ask the panel members to confirm that the minutes of the last panel meeting are accurate? Okay, so we now move on to the substance of this evening's meeting, which is the single planning application we have in front of us, which is for the haunted house development the proposed haunted house development at Legoland. I've got 3 speakers for this item, so there's an objector, the applicant and the parish council. Which do I start with?
The objector.
Okay, so we start with the objector, and that's Helen Price, and you've got 3 minutes.
Do you want an introduction first, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, let's just do this seconds first.
Have I got that the wrong way round? I do apologise. Sorry, that's my fault.
Okay, I've got Vivian crossed out on here, but that's fine.
Sorry, that is my mistake. I do apologise.
Press the right hand one.
I'm speaking in objection on behalf of a number of residents, as no full traffic assessment has been provided of the traffic trials being carried out during this peak month of August. I do not believe that the condition of your deferral has been met. The Legoland alternative signage strategy document made available is seriously flawed. It doesn't cover traffic flows from Legoland, which was the stated purpose of the trials. It doesn't cover the problems with signage during the trials which affected traffic flows, especially down Drift Road. It also doesn't cover the impact in Old Windsor or the Royal Windsor Way. So far during August, we've seen continuing traffic problems. When making your decision, you should also consider Legoland's non-compliance with the previous planning condition. Although they should have submitted annual travel plans, the Borough Strategic Operations Director confirmed on the 7th of August that a travel plan monitoring report is still awaited for both 2013 and 14. Also, a number of assurances given at the time of Legoland planning applications or at borough meetings have not been fulfilled. We were told that visitor numbers fluctuate year on year, but they've only increased. We were told that each new attraction would not increase visitor numbers. However, these same attractions have been prominently featured in ongoing national TV adverts. We were told that Legoland would trial a peak pricing model to reduce visitor demand in August, but instead visitors are currently offered a 25% discount if they book online for August. We were told that there would be no increase in traffic or air pollution, but because of the traffic congestion, we now have an air quality management area at a local junction. We were told in February that there would be no new major attractions planned in the next few years, but in April, a planning application for this massive haunted house was submitted. The updated traffic management solutions document tabled at the last meeting has not been subject to scrutiny by the Highways and Transport panel. It has been significantly altered since it was previously presented in February and includes measures which will not reduce traffic congestion. The document still contains no key performance indicators. In December, this panel stated it wanted to put future planning applications in the context of Legoland's long-term strategy. Now it's available, surely the panel needs to understand the implications before making any decision. It's obvious that the future proposals will increase visitor numbers throughout the year, but the road network can't cope with current visitor numbers. In peak periods, Legoland is often overcrowded and exceeds its car park capacity, which is a public safety issue as well as a traffic congestion issue. I believe it's time for councillors to put residents first and refuse this planning application.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Councillor Natasha Airy. Councillor Airy, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Councillor for Park Ward in Windsor, with Legoland falling within this ward. Legoland is a good business and it's a valuable asset to the Windsor economy, and it does engage well with the borough on many levels for joint working. However, as you've just seen, residents, in particular in Park Ward but in other areas, are very concerned about this planning application. And Park Ward residents are arguably those who are most affected by the Legoland traffic, and I have received quite a lot of representation from them in recent weeks over this. I don't want to duplicate what's already been said, but I do want to just raise a few key concerns on this planning application. Firstly, the traffic assessment. Councillor Hill said that there would be traffic trials going on for the whole of August, and I would feel those should be, the whole month's worth should be considered and taken into account when deciding this application. Additionally, the Highways Overview and Scrutiny Panel hasn't yet been able to consider the Legoland Alternate Signage Strategy Report, something which was noted there when I attended their last meeting. The application will also probably be worth considering in light of Legoland's investment strategy document to give a more holistic approach about the development over the next few years and potential impact in the area. I know that residents aren't satisfied where we're at currently at this time with the application coming before you, and questions surrounding documents like the Traffic Management Solutions document and residents believing that the full traffic assessment has not yet been undertaken are key concerns. Residents are dissatisfied to the point that they're actually doing their own traffic assessments at peak times, point to which tells you something there. So I know that the Highways panel is starting up a task and finish group on this, but it's in its very beginning stages. It hasn't met yet for its inception meeting, and although terms of reference are yet to be decided, I know that they're going to seek to engage with all parties, resolve these long-standing issues and work to see traffic issues improved in Windsor, and hopefully the task and finish group would make good progress. But I think, is that the end?
It's finished.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Are you okay with it?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, we need thriving businesses, but we do need to put resident concerns
Not allowed
first.
people to finish that sentence.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Airy. Final speaker is on behalf of the applicant, and that's Sue Kemp. And you're on 3 minutes.
In July, I set out the background to our need for investments, which I will not repeat. I also won't go into detail about the traffic trials, as you've received the results already, and both Councillor Hill and Ben Smith confirm them to be a success. However, just 2 additional points. The dates, criteria and comparison data for these trials were set by you, the council, not by Legoland. The dates were set specifically to monitor Legoland traffic, not supplementary traffic from other local events over which we have no control, so for example the Coronation Regatta or Windsor Half Marathon. I'm very proud of my business and what it brings to Windsor. Over recent months I've listened to a lot of comments relating to it which are ill-informed and completely without merit. Yes, Legoland is a successful business. I make no apologies for that. We're also a business which works hard not only to ensure that our guests have a wonderful day out, but also return year after year and always find something new to do and see. To achieve this and for us to be able to contribute to the local economy and community of Windsor, we need to be able to invest. This is why my colleagues and I are at a loss as to the real agenda behind the constant objection to our plans. If I were a conspiracy theorist, my only conclusion would be that a small faction in Windsor would simply like Legoland to close. But why? Our local MP said Legoland is really important with incredible value in Windsor. Why? Because we employ nearly 2,000 people, 80% of which live locally. 61% of them are 18 to 25, a group struggling to find employment and experience of work. We support hundreds of other local businesses and jobs in the area, from construction to hotels and taxi companies. We deliver more than £9.5 million into other local businesses every year, and this figure excludes the income that we generate into the local economy via our business rates and also our community taxes. More than that, Legoland is a good neighbour, a proactive supporter of the local community and town. This year alone, we have donated 16,000 free tickets to local charities, including over 10,000 tickets to West Windsor schools and local residents. Donated free Lego workshops to the Windsor and Maidenhead libraries this August, which you, the Borough, then chose to charge for. Voluntarily spent nearly £100,000 on the local traffic trials and signage changes. In conclusion, we have always aimed to work in harmony and partnership with the Royal Borough. Legoland would like to be able to remain here in Windsor, working hand in hand with you, the local council. But for this to happen, we do need your support. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we've heard from an objector, the parish councillor, and councillor and the applicant. I'm going to ask Suki to move on and provide a little bit of background to the item. I'm then going to have a couple of comments about what we're going to do in terms of our decision-making process, then I'll open the debate to members of the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually going to ask Kate, the case officer, to give you a presentation.
Thank you, Suki. This application is for a new haunted house-themed drop ride with associated queue line area, landscaping and alterations to the existing pathway. The structure would be two-storey and approximately 13 metres high. The ride would be located towards the middle of the site. The proposal is part of a continued investment into Legoland to maintain its status as a leading leisure attraction. The site is in the Greenbelt and it's considered that the proposal complies with the relevant Greenbelt policies. In respect of visual impact, Legoland have verified that the haunted house attraction will not be visible from outside the park. However, even if some of the towers were visible, it's considered that they would be unlikely to have a significant impact, and therefore no objections are raised in this respect. The application was deferred at the last panel meeting for officers to present the results of the traffic signage trials. The alternative routing trials have demonstrated an improvement in the flow of traffic by redistributing traffic away from heavily congested areas to other roads with greater capacity. These results will shortly be presented in more detail by our Highways Officer. Before that, I would like to draw your attention to the update to tonight's panel report. Additional points have been raised in respect of the highways issues, and these points have been responded to as necessary. I shall now hand over to our Highways Officer for the results of the traffic mitigation strategy.
Thank you. The traffic trials have been a joint initiative between ourselves at the Borough, Bracknell Forest Borough Council, Surrey County Council and the Highways Agency, together with Legoland, in order to look at ways in order to look at ways of trying to sort of redistribute the traffic onto the wider network in order to reduce the impact upon the most sensitive areas, which are the Imperial Road, Winfield Road approach to Legoland. So the trials have been funded by Legoland, and have been regular meetings to discuss the signage trials as well as the other initiatives that could be introduced. Apologies if this isn't particularly clear, but one of the main ways of trying to achieve this was by redistributing the traffic away from the previous main route, which concentrated traffic from M4 Junction 6 down the Royal Windsor Way and down through Imperial Road to Legoland. So the idea is that the traffic is redistributed around the wider network. So there is traffic is signed from the M25 Junction 13 along the A308 straight road through Old Windsor. Signage from the M3 is at the moment. Traffic from the M4 Junction 6 is signed via Goslar Way, Sheet Street Road and Mounts Hill instead of coming through the centre of Imperial Road and Wingfield Road. And there's also taking additional traffic from M4 Junction 89 onto the A308 and through Fivefield Lane onto Drift Road. So the trial's been undertaken on a number of different days when we've looked at the traffic on these road networks and then compared them to days when there have been similar levels of visitors at Legoland to try and make sure there is relatively comparative data. We've taken data from a number of automatic traffic counters and from temporary traffic counters in the area. We've also had information from Legoland about the number of visitors. We've also undertaken vehicle journey times from M4 Junction 6, M4 Junction 89 and Junction 13. So we tried to get a comprehensive set of data to try and draw some conclusions. The figures, this is a set of figures, probably it's very difficult to actually sort of read any of these figures, but ultimately there has been an overall reduction in the amount of traffic approaching Legoland from the north, so that traffic using Imperial Road and Wingfield Road, there's probably been about a 14% difference, reduction in traffic on that approach, while there's been an increase in traffic approaching Legoland from the south. So from the survey results, clearly there is a reduction in traffic going through the most sensitive areas. It's not an overall reduction in traffic because there is other traffic out there on the other parts of the network, but this is other parts of the network where perhaps there's less traffic already. But clearly there are less residents or less problems with putting additional traffic through those other perhaps less sensitive areas. So based on this analysis, the lead member for highways has agreed to make the scheme permanent. And so the scheme we've started putting in phase 1 of the scheme, the signage trial, and we'll be able to start with these sections for phase 2 for the sections within the Royal Borough, and we'll also be discussing the other sections with the adjoining authorities. Okay.
Thanks very much for those presentations. I just wanted to make a couple of comments really for members of the public before we move on to open debate up. So, whether we like it or not, the planning process, the development control process is very much plan-led. So we as a panel are constrained by the existing borough local plan. And the existing borough local plan, and I'm going to sort of paraphrase this, but it essentially anticipates that Legoland Windsor will continue to concentrate activities on the site to ensure that it retains its status as one of the country's most popular theme parks. So as a council at the moment, we're committed to making decisions in that light. However, we have to judge every application on its own merits, and I think without prejudging the discussion that's going to come, the main planning ground that we'll be focusing on is likely to be the highways issue, which we've already heard a little bit about. What I would say to members of the public is that your best opportunity to influence the long-term development of Legoland, and that's whether you want it to get bigger and increase in volume or want it to be curtailed, really comes through that borough local plan process. and at the moment the council's in the process of putting together a new local plan, which is going through public consultations over the next year or so, and really that's the best opportunity to influence the long-term outcome. As it is, we have to handle these applications based on the current plan, and they are inevitably taken piecemeal, so we have to look at the application in its own right without considering other applications that may arise. So I hope that makes sense. What I'd like to do now is open the debate on this particular application up to members of the panel. So let's start with Councillor Bicknell, who's obviously a ward councillor.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just get things going here. Basically, we as the planning panel, as you've explained, are effectively the referees between the residents, in my opinion, and Legoland. We want both to be successful, we want both sets to be happy. The only way we're going to do that is to work together. I was reading through on the website all of the letters that were on there. There were a couple for approval, were wanting us to approve, and then there were a greater number that wanted us not to approve. But one of the letters, which will remain nameless, I'll just read one paragraph, which I thought was succinct and actually got to the root of all of this, and it said, Legoland is constantly expanding, but it's not positioned for the volumes of visitors. It has ambitions to grow ever larger, creating a greater nuisance each year to the people who live in and around Windsor. Legoland should publicly declare its long-term intentions for its maximum numbers of visitors per day and explain how it will prevent people turning up speculatively on peak days. Only when this is understood will local people be happy to trust its redevelopment plans. And I think really, Mr. Chairman, what that is saying is that I understand there are commercial issues and that Legoland want to be number one. We want them to be number one. The Borough want them to be number one. Until there is some understanding of where the top of this peak is and where we're trying to manage, we're really going round and round in circles, trying to fathom out what the traffic's doing. And all we know is that there's perception from one sector saying it's more, another perception saying it's less. We haven't got absolute data. I don't believe there's some data up there, but it's a snapshot. There isn't any way of knowing, in fact, whether this application will create more traffic or not. It's going to be a perception of belief that we're going to come to tonight. That's where it's going to come down to. And so I'm sitting here as a ward councillor. I am happy to listen to what's going on. I haven't made my mind up what way I'm going to vote, and I still haven't at this point. I want to hear what the rest of the panel members have got to say. I want to hear what the officers have got to say, because I've got to be able to go back to both parties and explain how and why I've got to a decision that I'm going to get to at some point later on this evening. I think, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I will shut up and let some other people get in, but I'm happy to come back further if that's of assistance.
Could I just make a comment then?
Do you want to pop your microphone on? We're recording the meeting, so
sorry.
I would like to take issue with the Legoland representative when she said a faction seemed to be opposed to Legoland. In fact, I think most people within the borough want it commercially to be successful. Some probably not, but most I think do want it because of all the arguments that were actually set out. But it does affect everybody. I know I represent West Windsor, but we're is extremely affected by the traffic problem overall, so that it's not a faction, I don't think, it's a widespread problem, and we would like it to be resolved. Now, Councillor Bignell has mentioned a few minutes ago about the uncertainty of the data before us. Now, could I just refer back to our previous meeting in July, and that we voted unanimously that the application be deferred to allow full traffic assessment to be carried out. 3 work routes were to be implemented and assessed during August. We're only halfway through August, so I think these figures are actually quite meaningless. But I really don't know why we're holding this meeting this evening. We must wait until the full information comes out, and I would urge that this meeting should be deferred again until we have full information about the traffic flow, because for most people living within the borough, it just moves from one part to the other, but we are all affected. And what this solution is, I don't know, but certainly it is a problem for the whole of the Windsor area. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just ask a point of clarification from Councillor Penfold, because he said we should defer until the end of the season, essentially, when more traffic data's in. Am I right in thinking that we have to make a decision one way or the other tonight?
Mr. Chairman, this application was submitted on the 23rd of April. We are required by the government to determine this application by the 18th of June. Clearly the 18th of June was some time ago. All the time that we are beyond that date, the applicant is quite entitled to go to appeal for non-determination. We therefore really need to make a decision and to wait and wait again. When you asked for information about the impact of the traffic trials, we've given you information, or the applicant's given us information about the impact of the traffic trials. We are under an obligation to bring it back to you as quickly as we could.
Fine, I thought that was the case, so we're going to have to make a decision based on what we've got. Councillor Muir.
Yeah, how can we carry out the traffic trials during when we're halfway through August? We haven't given it time enough, surely.
Can I just say, I think you're going to have to consider the information you've got. Clearly, if you had more convincing information one way or the other, it might sway your opinion, but you have to make your mind up based on the information you've got, and you're free to go either way.
Okay, so if we make the decision for or against, if it's for, and then there's chaos on the roads and everything else, we can't turn that back?
No.
It's too late for the residents?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
While I welcome Legoland, obviously, as a local neighbour, because they do provide a lot of work and bring a lot of money into the borough. One of my main concerns with this haunted house application is that the traffic might actually become worse for the whole year, because it's saying that because it's a closed ride, you'll be able to use it during the winter times, which will obviously, you hope, I guess, want to attract more people during your off-peak times, or maybe half-term in October or whatever. So one of my concerns is we might end up getting more traffic for a longer period of time throughout the year.
Okay, fine, I'll make my contribution.
I won't interrupt you, Mr. Chairman.
I mean, I think this planning application largely is coming down, as we expected, to the traffic situation. Traffic has grown out of all proportion, the Legoland traffic over the last 20 years. That's what I believe, that's what my residents believe from their personal experience. I think it's not terribly helpful that there doesn't seem to have been serious work done to remedy this. By serious work, for example, a park and ride with a proper financial incentive. So I went on the Legoland website this week, and I sort of scratched around and looked at the park and ride options. And actually you have to park up and you have to pay for the bus to site. It's £4 to park on site. So for a family, it's going to be significantly cheaper to turn up and drive onto the site and park up than it is to use the existing park and ride. So, you know, a serious park and ride offering could make a difference. Alternatively, seeking out and looking for the option of having another exit to the site to get traffic out to the north, bypassing Windsor to the west and hitting the A308, that would be a possibility which could have a material impact on traffic in Windsor. I just don't believe that this re-signing is going to have a material impact on Windsor traffic. What we can see from this is that you're essentially taking the same number of cars and you're shuffling them from one street onto the next. The attention has obviously been to try and reduce traffic on Winkfield Road and Imperial Way, but actually when you look at the figures, Goslar Way, huge increase in traffic. Straight Road, which I know in Old Windsor is a particular traffic problem, traffic volumes have increased there, increased significantly on Sheet Street, which I would say is quite a sensitive traffic area within Windsor. I mean, essentially, without something like a properly financially incentivised park and ride, an alternative access out of Legoland to the north or north-west, or an agreement around capping the number of vehicles going into Legoland each day, without something significant like that, I don't really believe that we're going to see anything with a new development. We're going to see anything worse than increases in traffic volume, anything more than an increase in traffic volumes and impact on the town. And I appreciate this is only one planning application, but that's the problem as a committee. You know, we see these planning applications and they come through one at a time, and each one in itself may not have an absolutely huge impact on traffic. But at some point a threshold gets reached where you have to say we will not allow another application which we believe will increase visitor numbers. Now, I know that the applicant contends that this will help spread demand, and I do buy that. So the idea is, you know, everybody comes in August, well, will people come in the more marginal months because it's undercover? Sure, might be helpful. But I don't believe that this won't increase the traffic going into the Legoland site in the peak periods, as well as increasing demand in the sort of less busy bits of the season. So I think my concerns really are hugely around this traffic situation, and a lot of feedback from residents. You know, as a West Windsor councillor like Councillor Bignell, we get quite a lot of pushback from residents about the state of traffic that they certainly associate with Legoland. Certainly for the long-term future of Legoland, there's plenty of expansion options if they undertake some serious traffic mitigation work that would impact on Windsor. For me, I'm tending to the view that this may be a threshold application, given the amount of public concern, and I think legitimate it absolutely isn't from small numbers of people. If you're a ward councillor or a resident in West Windsor, you know that it isn't from a small quorum of anti-Legoland people, it's from a huge swathe of the community. So I've not totally made my mind up, but I'm tempted to think that this may be a point at which we've reached a threshold and shouldn't allow.
Chairman, if I may just comment, I hope you'll forgive me for saying this, but I have to remind members that you are here to represent the planning authority. I know you have quite legitimate ward interests, and of course those I respect and understand, but your duty here is to take a planning decision based on the planning application in front of you. You are not here to represent the interests of your residents directly, I'm afraid.
No, I think that's well understood. However, there's quite a bit of uncertainty here around the traffic, and feedback from residents regarding traffic volumes and commuting times, etc., has to be taken into account.
Mr. Chairman, you did mention about a second access from the north, and I just wanted to let members be aware that there is a Ramsar site, an SSSI and a special landscape area, which is why that so far hasn't come forward. It might be that we need to reassess and have a look at that very carefully, but it isn't a case of saying there's a nice bit of road there we can link into. It would require laying a brand new road across some very sensitive landscape and ecological impacts we'd need to take into account. So I wouldn't want you to think that anyone has been dragging their feet on that. That is an issue that would be quite difficult to solve, not impossible, but it would take time.
I know from Highways there's been discussions about that in the past, just examples of things that might...
Absolutely, I wasn't comparing it, I just wanted to explain why it hadn't happened to date.
Thank you, Chair. I know that these traffic numbers are for incoming traffic, and that was based on the problems that we had some time ago where the gates were closed at Legoland and we gridlocked Windsor. But we've not made any further progress, I don't believe, on these trials on the exiting traffic. The local residents do suffer with the exiting traffic as well, and nobody is denying that there's an underlying traffic issue, not anything to do with Windsor. That is probably the Clewer Hill Road, Imperial Road, St Leonard's Road is probably one of the busiest junctions in the borough, I would suggest. At ordinary times, even when Legoland is not open. So I do have some sympathies with Legoland, and I've had lots of out of the box, shall we say, conversations along the lines of Crossrail is coming through, couldn't we borrow one of their tunnelling machines? Because there's got to be a solution, but I think that you're right, Chair, that we are at a point where some things got to give, and I understand what Sue Kemp has been saying, that she feels that she's done everything for the council, and I think that Simon Hurrell is correct. This is the planning authority, and we have to look at this. We can't be worrying about what the council have received in terms of jobs, etc., or we can take it on board. But this is a planning issue for the residents that live in and around Windsor on a traffic issue, and we've got to grab the metal here and make a decision.
Are you proposing something there?
Mr. Chairman, if nobody else has got any better things to say, at this moment in time I would be uncomfortable to approve this planning application.
So you're proposing refusal?
I am.
Right, thank you. So we've got a proposal for refusal. I wanted to make a brief additional point before we complete the debate as well, but do we have a seconder for that? Yeah, we've got a seconder. Quite to take another round of comments before we go to a vote, and I'd just like to say I'm supportive of that position. I think for me, this is a very marginal decision. It's about whether the traffic has reached the threshold or not, which is inevitably a little bit subjective. I think to the point that Councillor Sevens was making, you know, if we allow this tonight, and there's a lot of uncertainty around the traffic situation, and it is as bad as we feared, there's no going back. If additional mitigation is proposed, or if there's more clarity around the success of the traffic management schemes, and an application that's similar is brought forward in future, we would of course be able to approve at that time. But essentially, once you grant approval, it's one way. Any further? Councillor, I can't allow you to speak tonight because I've told another councillor who's not a member and hadn't registered that they couldn't speak, I'm afraid.
You didn't tell me that I couldn't.
You're just
telling me now.
You've just rocked up.
I know, but I was here last month.
I didn't hear that, I didn't clock that meeting, so.
Yes. Any further comments? Then we'll go to Suki to try and help clarify, wrap up the debate and clarify reasons why we...
Could I ask an explanation of that? I am a councillor, and I represent a community which has some influence on it has been affected by this.
That's the...
Yes. Through you, Chair. Councillor Dear, the relevant part of the Constitution is 6.10, which says that, of course, a member can attend, any member of the council can attend Development Control Panel of which he or she is not a member. But generally, the approach that we take is that the time allocated to the parish council would be the time for external ward members to speak. That's the approach we've taken today.
And Councillor Airy spoke before you arrived today. She registered a week in advance for Democratic Services to speak in that slot.
If this is going to be applied, I think we should have notice of it.
It's in the... So I'm not going to continue this debate. It's in the Constitution. Okay. So confining debate to members of the panel...
Open and democratic.
No, I'm sorry, the purpose of this is that we have members of the panel and they have the say.
Say my bits by the local press.
So, has any other members of the panel got anything to say before we move on? So what I want to do now is go to Suki to help sort of close this bit of the debate, and so clearly we're going to, now it's been moved and seconded, we're going to have a vote on refusal, but we need, before we do that, to agree on the reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we've possibly got two reasons for refusal. I think the first one would be around highway safety, and that might say something along the lines of the proposed development would lead to an increase in traffic, particularly during the peak months of the season, which is considered harmful to the free flow of traffic and highway safety. As such, the proposal is considered to be contrary to the Borough Local Plan DG1 Part 9 and the National Planning Policy Framework Paragraph 32, as the cumulative impacts of the development on the road system are considered severe. I think there might be another reason for refusal, which would be about the intensification of activity, referring to the debate you've had about a tipping point and reaching the threshold. The proposed new ride, which would lead to an increase in visitor numbers, and the intensification of the use of the site, would be harmful to the Greenbelt and the amenity of the Windsor local community. And as such, it would be contrary to the Borough Local Plan Policy GB2 that relates to Greenbelt, and also the core principles of the National Planning Policy Framework relating to sustainable development.
Is everybody happy with those reasons unamended? Sorry, is everybody happy with those reasons unamended? So we're now going to move to a vote to refuse the application on the basis of the reasons that Suki's just read out. Are we going to need a named vote? Are we going to need a named vote? Or? Okay. Are we all in agreement with that? Okay, so that's agreed unanimously and the planning application is refused. Okay, we've got a couple of essential monitoring reports to finish off with. So do you want to run through these?
Yes, very briefly, Mr. Chairman. We've received 3 appeals. The first one is relating to a written representation application regarding Pizza Hut in Thames Street and a new shopfront, effectively, which was felt to be inappropriate for the listed building and in the centre of Windsor. The second one is relating to, again, a refusal for the construction of a 2-bedroom detached house, which is on the garage site on Victoria Road and Queen's Road, Eton Wick. The third is, again, written representations for the installation of 3 roof-mounted air conditioning units at Cafe Nero. Fairly straightforward, all written representations. And finally, we have a decision which relates to a tree preservation order, which was requesting consent to remove 2 conifer trees and a cherry tree. We refused that application, and that has been dismissed at appeal, so those trees are remaining in place and protected.
So 100% record this month.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Okay. Great. Let's call the meeting to a close then. Thank you.